All right, commissioners, if you can start to turn on your cameras. And Chair Weeks, staff is ready when you are.
Thank you, Mike. Okay, so it looks like we're all here. So with that, I would like to call to order the June 24th, 2021 meeting of the Santa Rosa Planning Commission. And before we start, I'd like to read the following statement. Due to the provisions of the Governor's Executive Orders N-25-20 and N-29-20, which suspend certain requirements of the Brown Act and the order of the Health Officer of the County of Sonoma to shelter in place to minimize the spread of COVID-19, the Planning Commissioners will be conducting today's meeting in a virtual setting using Zoom webinar. Commissioners and staff are participating from remote locations and are practicing appropriate social distancing. Members of the public may view and listen to the meeting as noted on the city's website and as noted on the agenda. Members of the public wishing to speak during item 4, public comment period, or during our public hearings today will be able to do so by raising their hand and will be given the ability to address the commission. So with that, Mr. Maloney, would you like to call roll?
Yes, thank you, Chair Weeks. Let the record reflect that all commissioners are present except Commissioner Krepke.
Thank you. Item 2 is study session, which we have none. Item 3, approval of minutes, which we have none. And now on to item 4, public comments. So with that, I will now open public comment for any item not included in this meeting's agenda. If you wish to make a comment via Zoom, please select the raised hand button. If you are dialing in via telephone, please dial *9 to raise your hand. Each speaker has 3 minutes. A countdown timer will appear for the convenience of the speaker and viewers. And please make sure to unmute yourself when you're invited to do so. And your microphone will be muted at the end of this countdown. Mr. Maloney, do we see any?
Chair Weeks, anyone is raising their hand at this time.
Okay. So we'll wait just a couple of minutes or seconds, actually. See if we do see anybody. Doesn't look like it. So with that, I will go ahead and close the public comment portion of the meeting for items that are not on the agenda. Okay, so we're going on now to item 5, Planning Commissioner's Report. And I'd like to read the Planning Commission Statement of Purpose. And that is as follows. The Planning Commission is charged with carrying out the California planning and zoning laws in the city of Santa Rosa. Duties include implementing of plans, ordinances, and policies relating to land use matters, assisting in writing and implementing the general plan and area plans, holding public hearings and acting on proposed changes to the zoning code, zoning map, general plan, tentative subdivision maps, and undertaking special planning studies as needed. And with this, I'd like to ask if there are any committee reports from either subdivision or waterways. Commissioner Carter?
Yes, this morning the Waterways Advisory Committee met to consider a design review application for 52 units of medium density housing known as Stony Point Flats at Stony Point Road and Roseland Creek. The committee asked for more complete landscape grading plans and hydrological information, as well as a completed initial study to understand the CEQA analysis for the project, and asked for it to return to the committee. I don't believe it will come to the Planning Commission.
Thank you, Commissioner Carter. Commissioner Collier, did you have a subdivision committee meeting?
No, we have not had a subdivision committee as of yet.
Thank you. Okay, so with that, department reports. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm skipping. Do any commissioners have any reports or comments that they would like to make at this time? No. Okay, believe it or not, I have nothing. And with that, we'll go on to item 6, department reports.
Hey, good afternoon, Chair Weeks and members of the Planning Commission. Thank you for taking time today to be here and to support the work of the city and the community. Commissioner Carter, thank you especially for the time that you've put in today as serving on the WAC and that lengthy meeting that we had this morning, which was great. It was very helpful. We appreciate that. I think that probably the topic on everyone's mind is, the in-person meetings and what does that look like? And I wish that we did have updated information to share with you. I think, as you know, City Council recently held their first in-person, what we're referring to as a hybrid meeting, which is both an in-person and a Zoom meeting combined. And I understand that was successful. So we'll continue to wait for instructions for other boards and commissions and keep you posted. I think we will have ample opportunity to get you early notice about when we might change a meeting format going forward. So I just wanted to give you that quick update. Second, I wanted to let you know that on July 13th, City Council will hold public hearings for appeals that Planning Commission reviewed, I believe in March, 2300 Bethards and 1900 Brush Creek Road. And Chair Weeks will be participating in that meeting representing Planning Commission. So you might want to keep that on your calendars. And then as we go into the summer vacation season and once again, we're in an opening up of our opportunities to be out and be active. We will take advantage of both scheduled Planning Commission meetings in July. And so we do have agendas for both of those meetings and we'll be holding them. So with that then, Chair, that does complete the department report for this week. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Triple, I know we have a joint study session with the council on, I believe it's the 20th of July.
Right, I believe that's correct, yes.
And that will be a hybrid, so the commission will be zooming in. Is that correct?
I believe that at this point, yes, it would be by Zoom. You would be joining by Zoom, sure.
Thank you. Any questions of staff at this point? Okay, then we'll move on to item 7, statements of abstentions. Is there anyone who needs to abstain on either of the items today? Okay, so seeing none. Then we'll go to consent items, which we have none today. So the first item is scheduled item 9.1, public hearing, Crown Castle relocation project. It's an exempt project with conditional use permit at 1236 Cleveland Avenue, CUP 20-074, and it is an ex parte disclosure. So Commissioner Carter, do you have anything to disclose?
Only that I visited the site and I have nothing further.
Thank you. Commissioner Duggan?
I also visited the site and have nothing further to disclose.
Commissioner Holton?
I also visited the site on Cleveland. However, I didn't visit the site on Ridgeway. And I have nothing to disclose.
Thank you. Commissioner Collier?
I also visited the site and have nothing further to disclose.
And Vice Chair Peterson?
I also visited the site and have no new information to disclose.
Thank you. And I also visited the site and have no information to disclose. So with that, I believe we have Mr. Ross with us today.
Yes, thank you, Chair Weeks, members of the Planning Commission. I'm going to go ahead and start the presentation for you.
Thank you.
Oops. Okay, do you see that? And that's a normal presentation?
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Again, thank you, Chair Weeks, members of the Planning Commission. My name is Adam Ross, project planner for the Crown Castle Telecommunications Facility located at 1236 Cleveland Avenue. I do want to note that late correspondence was provided and included in the agenda packet, indicating that the existing telecommunications facility to be removed as part of this project is not located at 135 Ridgeway Avenue, but the proper address is 1500 Armory Drive. It's essentially the same location. It was just a GIS error. The project includes a major conditional use permit for placement of an 83-foot tall monopine telecommunications tower, and that's considered a major telecommunications facility under zoning code section 20-44, as well as a conditional use permit. The project is going to be reviewed by the design review board as a major design review permit on July 1st of 2021. The project location is 1236 Cleveland Avenue. That is in the northwest quadrant of the city. It butts right next to Highway 101, between Cleveland Avenue and Highway 101. Here's an aerial image of the site. It is surrounded on 3 sides by other commercial uses. And like I said, Highway 101 is right here. And here's Cleveland Avenue. Commercial uses surround the site. And then the star denotes the location of the telecommunication tower on the existing site. And the current use is Culligan Water of Sonoma County. They are a water bottle service company and delivery service company at this site, and that will be unaffected by the proposed use. Some of the project history. On December 29, 2020, the conditional use permit and major design review applications were submitted to the Planning and Economic Development Department. On February 26th of this year, a notice of application was sent to property owners and occupants within 600 feet of the proposed site. And at the same time, staff requested additional documentation for the California Environmental Quality Act analysis for this project. On May 13th, the shot clock was extended to July 1st, 2021 via a tolling agreement. The tolling agreement and shot clock, it's a regulation set forth by the Federal Communications Commission. It limits the time a local agency has to act on a telecommunications application. That is 150 days from project submittal, and that also includes the CEQA analysis in that time frame. So the shot clock was extended in agreement with the applicant to allow staff to fully vet the CEQA analysis for this site. On May 25th, the application was deemed complete, and on June 16th, the applicant agreed to extend the shot clock a second time, and that's to accommodate any sort of appeals that may occur and to accommodate for scheduling that appeal hearing. That is both for this meeting and the design review board appeal timeframes as well. And on July 1st, as I said, that's coming up. It will go before the design review board as a major design review permit. The general plan is retail and business service. That is it's consistent with the general plan land use designation of retail and business services, in that this designation is intended to accommodate retail and service enterprises, office and restaurants, for which it implements the zoning code, and the zoning code allows it by way of approval of a conditional use permit. Further, the proposed use is also consistent with the North Santa Rosa Stationary Specific Plan, which this site is in that boundary of. The plan acknowledges that infrastructure improvements are necessary, and the placement of the equipment will increase telecommunications and services. The zoning is general commercial within the station area combining district. That's the Santa Rosa Stationary Combining District. As part of the zoning analysis goes, it's a major telecommunications facility is allowed within the general commercial zoning district, again, by approval of a conditional use permit. It meets all development standards for CG zoning, except that, and it also complies with zoning code section 20-44, except that the height is subject to the approval of the review authority, in this case, the Planning Commission. Here's a site plan of the site. Here's the existing site. And here's the location of the telecommunications facility. And I just wanted to verify, I kind of have a frozen screen. Is everyone still with me?
Yes. What we have on the screen is the North Santa Rosa Station Area Plan map.
Yeah, Adam, you're currently showing slide 7.
Okay. I'm going to stop share and reshare. Give me 1 second.
Mr. Ross is still showing slide 7. I'm not sure if.
I'm having technical difficulties. I think I might need to sign out because I only see a black screen on my end and sign back in.
Okay, if you want to, you can also email Patty and I the presentation, and if we need to, we can advance the slides for you.
Okay, I'm going to have to log out and log back in.
Okay. Chair Weeks, do you want to take a brief intermission, or do you want to hang on the line?
Why don't we take a 5-minute break if we could?
Sounds good.
So
Commissioner,
we'll be back at 4:22.
Sounds good. Thank you, commissioners. If you can please just turn off your videos and audio. See you then.
Are we ready to continue?
Thanks, Chair Weeks. I haven't quite heard from staff yet. Give me one moment.
Okay.
It looks like Mr. Ross is going to be logging in right now.
Okay, thank you.
And we'll be able to test it out. If it doesn't work, we'll just go. We'll ask for another recess so we can set up the system so that we can present for him.
Okay, just let us know. We're here.
All right. Looks like Mr. Ross just logged in. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm back. Sorry. Give me 1 second and I'll get back up and running. I apologize.
That's okay.
Okay. Do you see the presentation again?
Yes, we're on page 1.
Okay. And I think you said it stopped at this.
Yes, that one is where it stopped.
Okay, great. So should I just start from here?
Yes.
Okay. So the project is within the North Santa Rosa Station Area Specific Plan. Here's the project. The star denotes the location. It is compliant with that specific plan policies in that it would bring more telecommunication to the area, and that is a recognized need to the area. The zoning is general commercial combined station area, that -SA. So it's subject to station area zoning standards and general commercial zoning standards. The major telecommunications facility is allowed within that general commercial zoning district, and it meets all development standards of the zoning code, including setbacks. And height, I should say, it's subject to, under zoning code section 20-44, that is subject to approval of the planning commission for the height of the structure. It doesn't limit a height. It doesn't have a minimum or maximum height standard for telecommunication towers in the zoning code. Here's the site plan. So here's that existing use of Colligan Water Services, the parking lot, and it's in the northeast corner of the site. There will be a fence structure around the site. It's roughly 800 square feet. And then it's the telecommunications tower. Here's a blow up of what that little section is. So there's some ground level equipment. There is an emergency diesel generator on site as well, but screened from public view, and other equipment as necessary. Here are some basic elevations of that monopine. The height of the monopine itself allows for future co-location of the site for other providers as well. And the site, sorry, I just wanted to read this off, is the site is physically suitable for the type, density, and intensity of the use being proposed, including access, utilities, and the absence of physical constraints. in that the existing site is both developed and surrounded by existing development. It's got adequate access to the proposed use. And once it's in operation, the telecommunications facility does not require frequent visits by employees. And with that, it does not intensify the use of the site. Here's some photo renderings of what the monopine would look like. So existing without proposed. This is the property just north of 1236 Cleveland, looking into the site. Here's looking directly, this is the 1236 Cleveland property. And here it is proposed. And this is looking from the other side of Highway 101. And as you can see, the design, location, size, and operating characteristics of the proposed activity, it'd be compatible with the existing and future land uses in the vicinity. And at the base of this cell tower and all related equipment, it's screened from public view with a 6-foot fence and will be placed adjacent to an existing commercial building to minimize visual impacts as much as possible. And the proposed height of the tower is necessary to maintain adequate height for function while allowing future co-location of the site as previously stated. Here are 2 images of the coverage with and without. I will say that this does not include, while it's provided in the agenda packet, this does not include the existing service, this left image, of their existing tower. But if they're not able to relocate, this is the service that would be lost. This is a service that is provided. This is specific to AT&T. Again, there could be other providers come to this site in the future. So this is the service area that it would improve on for AT&T customers. And just to reiterate that this is Crown Castle is the owner of the telecommunications tower. It's not a Verizon or a AT&T owned telecommunications facility. So here is Verizon. This again is without the relocation. It doesn't include the existing location, which is this star right here on the north. But if approved by the Planning Commission, this would be the coverage that it enhances for Verizon customers. And granting the permit would not constitute a nuisance or be injurious or detrimental to the public interest, health, safety, convenience, or welfare, or materially injurious to persons, property, or improvements in the vicinity and the zoning district in which the property is located. In that the project, I did want to mention also that the project did include a radio frequency compliancy report prepared by Hammett and Edison. It's dated November 10th, 2020, included in the agenda packet. It concluded that the proposed placement of the telecommunications tower at the subject site will not result in exposure to the public to excessive levels of radio frequency energy as defined in the FCC rules and regulations, and the rules and regulations and all other project conditions were provided by staff and city staff. And the project was reviewed in compliance with the California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA, under CEQA guidelines section 15303, in that the cellular tower and related equipment qualifies for the Class 3 categorical exemption, which exempts the construction of new small structures such as telecommunication towers, as they are considered small structures that are similar to this project. Public comments received. There was one public comment communication received by staff, me, in which the individual was interested in tracking the project movement. Not so much an objection to the project, just wanted to be updated. And overall, no other objections. There was that communication with CAL FIRE representatives that was part of that late correspondence material sent to the Planning Commission and is a part of the agenda packet. With that, the Planning and Economic Development Department recommends that the Planning Commission approve by resolution a conditional use permit to allow a telecommunications facility located at 1236 Cleveland Avenue. That concludes staff's presentation. The applicant does have a presentation, which I will open up whenever you are ready.
Thank you, Mr. Ross. Are there any questions of Mr. Ross before we move on to the applicant's presentation? Okay, seeing none. Mr. Ross, if you would go ahead and get the applicant's presentation up.
Yes, one second.
Thank you.
Okay, so whenever the applicant, I think the secretary will give them permission to speak, and then they just tell me to move the slide forward, and I will.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Just want to make sure everybody can hear me.
Yes, we can.
Hi, this is Jason Osborne representing Crown Castle, and I just wanted to introduce myself and first of all thank Adam for his amazing presentation. He's been wonderful to work with, and we've enjoyed him going back and forth and getting this project to the point where it's at. I do have with me my client, ultimately my client, Jacob Sparks, who will be handling the specific presentation, and then Tim Page, also in attendance, and also Raj Mathur, who is with Hammond and Edison, just in case there are any EMF questions as well. And I'll be happy to turn it over to Jacob. We can address any specific questions along with a brief presentation, but Adam's was quite complete. Thank you, Adam. You took most of our job away from us. So not sure, Jacob, you got to raise your hand or how the Zoom thing works on this side. Sorry, guys, I'm not super.
All of the applicants right now have permission to speak. If you can stay muted though when you're not speaking, it would help for interference. Thank you.
Okay, let me, so I mute myself. Sorry, I'm trying to figure this out here. Oh, there we go. Okay, I will mute and then let Jacob go. Thank you.
And Jacob, it looks like you have unmuted, but we are not able to hear you at this time.
Oh, sorry. Can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Gotcha. Apologies about that. Just want to thank, planning staff, planning commission for, joining today, and Adam as well for his very thorough presentation. Like Jason said, it pretty much mimicked ours. There isn't much to present that would add more context to the overall application. We are more here to kind of answer any questions that the staff, that commission may have, but we can definitely go through the slides, Adam, and just touch on a few points. Feel free to. Yep, so just obviously seeking approval for this conditional use permit, and that address, the 135 Ridgeway Avenue, is the incorrect address that the site will be relocating from. The correct address is that 1500 Armory Drive that Adam pointed out earlier. I will just want to reiterate, it is relocating from that property to the proposed property. We obviously always try to minimize any visual effects to our best of our abilities. And that's, we went with the stealth monopine design. Next slide, Adam. There's just a few key facts here, just on 96% of Americans rely on their cell phone. They own a cell phone, and 57% of American homes exclusively rely on cell phones. And then 80% or more 911 calls are made from those wireless devices. And on this one, Adam, you can kind of click through a few times. There's a few things that will pop up, just kind of giving you a broad overview of how the wireless world would be connected, and what the goal is from a shared infrastructure perspective. As you see here, just pointing out the different statistics and uses from wireless connectivity. You just go to the next one, Adam. Thank you. This is a brief overview map, just kind of showing the different perspectives that Adam touched on. that those simulated views came from, just from the northwest, location 1, southwest from location 2, and then across Highway 101 up there to the northeast. And then as you see here, the same photo simulations on these next 3 slides. And here we just include coverage maps that Adam touched on. This is actually the existing coverage of what that existing site provides today. And we obviously, our goal is to not have an adverse impact on existing coverage. So our proposed location is what would get us to the closest that the existing currently provides. Next one, Adam. Then obviously the loss of coverage if there were no tower in the vicinity. And then also another few key facts that we follow all state and federal compliance, the EPA, FAA, and FCC, the safety aspect of yearly ground-based inspections, structural inspections every 3 years as per the national standard. And then our NOC, is what we call it, the Network Operations Center, as 24/7 access, monitors all systems and responds to network outages. And then there's contact information on the last slide. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sparks. Okay, is that it for the applicant's presentation?
Yes, just in case you guys have any questions, we're also here.
Thank you. Does the commission have any questions of the applicant before we open the public hearing? Commissioner Duggan?
Yes, I believe it was in the project narrative. It mentioned there were no single family homes within 75 feet of the proposed new location. And I just wanted to confirm that the houses on Ridgeway on the west side of the sound wall and that little like very small stub of Ridgeway, and I believe they're occupied by owners, are outside of the 75-foot distance.
That is my understanding, yes, based on our discussions with Adam Ross. We did a Google Earth survey, and then I did drive the area as well and measured it as well as I could. I mean, there are some that are close. I believe the closest one was 98 feet.
Okay, thank you.
Any other question of the applicant before we go to the public hearing? Okay, so with that, I'd like to go ahead and open the public hearing on this item. If you wish to make a comment via Zoom, please select the raise hand button. If you are dialing in via telephone, please dial *9 to raise your hand. Each speaker will have 3 minutes. A countdown timer will appear for the convenience of the speaker and viewers, and please make sure to unmute yourself when asked to do so, and your microphone will be muted at the end of that countdown time. So, do we have anybody who would like to make a comment?
Thank you, Julie. It looks like no one is raising their hand at this time.
Okay, we'll wait a few seconds. Let's see, it doesn't look like anybody's stepping up. So with that, I will go ahead and close the public hearing on this item and bring it back to the commission. Are there any questions of staff, any additional questions of staff or the applicant at this time? Commissioner Duggan?
Yes, I've got one for Adam. Is there any condition about the maintenance of the monopine? Just as that, because I'm a long-term planning commissioner here. It's like, we've always had this question about like painting the poles, 10 years down the road, do they have to replace tree limbs and paint the pole and whatnot?
Question. I'm looking through the conditions of approval right now. Typically all projects are supposed to be maintained by and in good use of by the by the applicant and whoever, whomever the developer is. But I don't see anything that is specific here. I think it's within your scope to, add any conditions that may satisfy you on that end. I don't think the applicant would have to accept, but I don't think that they would be unwilling to accept any conditions proposed by the Planning Commission. And I do know that the monopine is to be painted green, within those branches. So maybe an idea of just for that maintenance to be included as a condition of approval.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Collier?
Kind of on the same note that Commissioner Duggan was talking about, couldn't a way that, so say the paint deteriorates over the next 15 years, couldn't a member of the public essentially open up a code enforcement complaint if it looked like it was in need of repair or something like that? Is that another way to go about the long-term maintenance? Just because we wouldn't know exactly, like, to condition it if it needed to get painted every 5 years or 15 years, it'd be hard to determine the lifetime of paint.
Yes, they could contact code enforcement, and code enforcement is obligated to go check it out.
I see that Mr. Osborne has his hand raised, so perhaps he can weigh in on this from.
I will say this, and obviously this would have to be approved by ultimately our client, but there are cases where in other jurisdictions there's a 10-year renewal period wherein there's just a review every 10 years on the site itself to ensure that it's adhering to the conditions, and that could be something that we could discuss or something. It would be inappropriate and it would fall California state law.
And I just wanted to add that it is also scheduled for the design review board on July 1st. They'll weigh in on some of the aesthetics and the fencing. That's one of the things to be left open to them to kind of provide some guidance on. So that's the information I have for you. I guess do as discuss and do as what you feel is fit. I think we can do that.
Is it following along Commissioner Duggan and Commissioner Collier, is it possible to request that the design review board add something regarding maintenance?
Yes, you could do that.
Okay. So with that, if somebody would like to enter the resolution, and I'm sorry, are there any more questions? Sorry, any more questions on this item? Okay, then if somebody would like to read the resolution.
I will.
Mr. Duggan, thank you.
I'll move a resolution of the Planning Commission of the City of Santa Rosa making findings and determinations and approving a conditional use permit for the Crown Castle relocation project, which includes construction of an 83-foot tall monopine telecommunications facility located at 1236 Cleveland Avenue, APN 012-061-032, file number PRJ 20-023, CUP 20-074, and waive further reading.
Thank you. Is there a second? Commissioner Collier?
Second.
Thank you. Okay, so with that, we'll have opened the discussion. Go ahead and do it alphabetically. Commissioner Carter?
I'm generally in support of the project. I think I can make all of the necessary findings in granting the use permit. I trust that our granting the use permit and making the findings does not fix the design for the design review board, and that their normal input on the project will still be appropriate once it comes to them. But in generally, I'm in support of the project.
Thank you. Commissioner Duggan?
I'm also in support of the project. I can make all the necessary findings. And I'd be happy if Planner Ross wants to just forward our comments to design review regarding the maintenance. And if they have any other things or what conditions they want to add, that would be fine. But otherwise, I'm in support of the project.
Thank you. Commissioner Holton?
I'm also in support of the project, and I can also make all the necessary findings. However, to echo the sentiment of my fellow commissioners, I feel it's really important that you guys at least develop a preventative maintenance schedule of a 3-year. That's what's typical. And then also provide to the public a possible way to inform you guys in the event of a bird crashing into one of those little, tree branches or anything happening to ruin the aesthetic of the look, because that can get out of hand really quick. Believe me, I know. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Holton. Commissioner Kalia?
I can also make all the required findings and will be supporting the project along with our fellow commissioners' comments about giving the design review a copy of our comments.
Thank you. Vice Chair Peterson?
I can also make all the required findings and share the same sentiments as my fellow commissioners on the maintenance issue.
Thank you. And I also can make all the required findings, and I'm glad to see an increase in bandwidth and echo fellow commissioners regarding passing on our comments to Design Review Board next week. So with that, the motion was made by Commissioner Duggan, seconded by Commissioner Kalia. Mr. Maloney, would you like to call roll?
Commissioner Carter?
Aye.
Hold on one second. Chair Weeks.
Did you not get my aye?
We're just having a little technical issue. It'll just take a second.
All right, let's start over. Commissioner Carter?
Aye.
Commissioner Duggan?
Aye.
Commissioner Holton?
Aye.
Commissioner Kalia?
Aye.
Vice Chair Peterson?
Aye.
And Chair Weeks.
Aye. So that passes with 6 ayes and 1 absent, with Commissioner Okrepke being absent. And so then with that, we'll go on to our next item for the day. Planners can change seats. Thank you, Mr. Osborne. Okay, so our next item, if everybody's ready, is 9.2. It's a public hearing, Spring Lake Village, East Grove, Draft Environmental Impact Report. It's public hearing, file number MJP 14-012. It is an ex parte disclosure. So we'll start with Mr. Carter, or Commissioner Carter.
I did visit the site and have nothing further to disclose.
Thank you. Commissioner Duggan?
I visited the site and have nothing further to disclose.
Thank you. Commissioner Holton?
I also visited the site and have nothing further to disclose.
Thank you. Commissioner Kalia?
I also visited the site and have nothing further to disclose.
Vice Chair Peterson?
I also visited the site and have nothing further to disclose.
And I also visited the site and have nothing further to disclose. So we have Mr. Triple and Ms. Nicholson.
Great. Thank you, Chair Weeks. And before introducing Senior Planner Nicholson, I'd just like to share a few comments with the Planning Commission about the purpose of this evening's meeting more broadly. And then Ms. Nicholson will provide specific guidance for review of the Spring Lake Village Draft EIR. So joining us this evening are Ms. Nicholson and the GHD EIR consultant representatives, Brian Baccarini and Christine Gaspar. We also want to recognize the input that other city staff members, technical consultants, and especially the public, including Planning Commission this evening, provide to the EIR development process. The goal of the process is to present a detailed, thorough, and adequate EIR for public review that is supported by data, analysis, and expert review. But the heart of the CEQA process is really the production of public discourse documents. These documents inform in that they seek to identify potential impacts and ways to mitigate or offset those potential impacts. But as much as they inform, they're also informed through public review that seeks to elicit comments and questions from the public, responsible agencies, Planning Commission, and really any other interested party. We are obligated to respond to all written comments. This then forms the final environmental impact report, a publicly disclosed report that both informs and is informed. With that, I want to turn it over to Senior Planner Amy Nicholson. Amy will review the purpose of this evening's review opportunity. With GHD representatives, gather public and planning commissioner comments, and then look forward to next steps in the EIR development process. Amy?
Thank you so much, Andrew, and good evening, Chair Weeks and members of the Commission. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you. So as Andrew mentioned, the item before you this evening is the Spring Lake Village East Grove Draft Environmental Impact Report. And I'm going to just provide a brief project description. There will be more detail provided by the environmental consultant in just a few minutes. The Draft Environmental Impact Report evaluates an off-site expansion of the existing Spring Lake Village. The project site is located approximately 1,000 feet east of the existing campus, and this is at the intersection of Los Alamos Road and Highway 12, and also Melita Road. The project includes a 32-unit community care facility, which includes both duplex and villa units. And the project entitlements that are required include a rezoning to a planned development, which the existing Spring Lake Village is within. It also requires a conditional use permit and hillside development permit, and also design review. The rezoning, conditional use permit, and hillside development permit will be back before the Planning Commission, as will the final environmental impact report, at which time the Commission will make a recommendation to the Council. As Andrew so nicely summarized, the purpose of this evening's meeting is to receive comments on the adequacy of the draft environmental impact report from both the Planning Commission and also members of the public. Each of the questions and comments that we hear this evening, in addition to those that we have already received and will continue to receive up to July 15th, will be responded to in the final environmental impact report. And finally, Andrew also did a great job explaining the purpose of CEQA, but this document has been provided in compliance with the California Environmental Quality Act, and the purpose of CEQA is to disclose environmental impacts of a proposed project to review authorities and decision makers, and also members of the public, and also to avoid or reduce significant environmental impacts. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. Otherwise, I can go ahead and pass it off to our environmental consultant from GHD.
Thank you. Do any commissioners have questions of Ms. Nicholson at this time? Okay, then if you would go ahead and get the consultant set up.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Chair Weeks, the Casper and Cataldo have been, they have the ability to unmute, and we're searching for the third consultant right now on the list.
And Michael is a member of the applicant team, so perhaps after the consultant provides the presentation, he might be able to provide a comment. Okay.
Yes.
Great, thank you.
A reminder to everybody who does have the ability to mute and unmute, if you can please stay muted when you're not speaking, we'd appreciate it.
Hi, Amy. Good afternoon, Chair Weeks and Planning Commissioners. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. I can't see myself in the screen, so I wasn't sure if I was live or not. Well, good afternoon. My name is Brian Bacciarini from GHD, and I will have a presentation on the draft EIR. Amy, next slide. To reiterate what Amy said and the acting supervisor, there is a draft EIR that is out for circulation now. It was released on June 1st. It was circulated for an ongoing 45-day review period. To date, approximately 20 comments have been received. So as Amy mentioned, after the public review period, all of the comments that are received here tonight, as well as are received over that course of the review period, are going to be responded to. And then we will be before your commission again at a future meeting in which we will summarize all of those comments, and we will summarize the final EIR that was prepared. And then at that future meeting, staff may ask your commission to make a recommendation to the City Council for considering certification of the EIR. Next slide. But today's hearing, as Amy mentioned, is just to discuss the environmental review to date. So to help with that, I've developed this presentation. It summarizes the project site, the proposed development, and the draft EIR. Next slide. So first, just a project overview. As Amy mentioned, it's an off-site expansion of the existing Spring Lake Village facility that's at 5555 Montgomery Drive. The expansion site is located approximately 1,000 feet to the east. It's located just south of Highway 12, west of Los Alamos Road, north of Melita Road. Residents of the existing Spring Lake Village campus on Montgomery Drive and then this East Grove expansion would be able to use amenities at both locations. The sites would share operations, maintenance, and management. They'd share staff and services, dining services. There would be shuttle service between the two facilities. So it's really a connected expansion facility. And then there are also off-site pedestrian improvements that are proposed to facilitate, the walkability and connection between the two sites. Next slide. So it's great. You all are familiar with the site. You all mentioned that you have actually visited the site. It is 7.28 acres in size, and it consists of 3 parcels. The parcel at 225 Los Alamos Road is the largest. It's undeveloped aside from 2 groundwater wells that would be used to supply irrigation demand. The parcels at 5803 and 5815 Melita Road are developed. They have applicant-owned single-family residences that are there and that are leased out to tenants. One of those residences was constructed in 1950, the other in 1977. Both residents were evaluated and were determined not to be historically significant. The expansion site is designated very low density residential in the general plan and rural residential in the zoning. 225 Los Alamos Road is zoned R40, and then the Melita Road parcels are R20. And the project proposes a rezone to PD 308, which is the zoning for the existing Spring Lake Village campus. The next slide. Okay, so this slide shows the site plan for the proposed project. The project would include 32 independent senior living units, supporting up to 64 residents. The development would include a mix of 10 single-story duplex cottages that provide 20 of the units, and then a 2-story residential villa building that would provide 12 units. Cottages would include individual patios, parking garages, and driveway spaces. Parking would also include a mix of covered and uncovered parking spaces on site. Community building is proposed near the center of the site for residents and guests. That would include kitchen and dining facilities, activity and common rooms, and admin space. Then there's a number of outdoor features, patios, outdoor common areas, pathways around the site, and landscaped areas. The primary access point to the site would be a new driveway off of Los Alamos Road. The driveway would be aligned with the existing entrance to Villa Los Alamos, which is directly across the street, and would be designed to accommodate fire truck access. And then in accordance with the California Fire Code, a secondary emergency vehicle access is also included in the project, and that access is shown off of Melita Road, as Amy is showing there. So the project would tie into existing Santa Rosa and PG&E utilities that are within Los Alamos Road and Melita Road. I mentioned this earlier, there's 2 existing groundwater wells on the site, which would be used for irrigation demand to reduce some of the project's demand on potable water. The project is required to be compliant with the current version of the California Building Code, the California Fire Code, and City of Santa Rosa Fire Department standards. And last thing for this slide, the project would create the equivalent of 12 full-time employees. So next slide. The project proposes several off-site improvements for bicycle, pedestrian, and stormwater conveyance. So along Melita Road, as Amy's going to kind of circle there, there's new sidewalk would be installed, as well as new and replacement storm drain piping. And then at the intersection of Melita Road and Montgomery Drive, there would be a new sidewalk, ADA curb ramps, and crosswalks to improve the crossing facilities and safety, again, to facilitate that connectivity. And then along Los Alamos Road, there would be an off-site pedestrian path, publicly accessible. It would connect to the existing crosswalk that's at Highway 12. And then along this section of Los Alamos Road, it would be widened to provide a Class 2 bicycle lane, consistent with the city's bicycle and pedestrian master plan. And then finally, along Highway 12, a sidewalk extension is proposed along the frontage that would connect to the existing sidewalk near Hope Chapel Church. Next slide. So now to just go through the EIR process, it began with a scoping period to gain feedback from agencies and the public about the project and to help scope out and determine the areas to really be focused on in the EIR. So a notice of preparation describing the project and the potential effects was developed and circulated in accordance with CEQA guidelines. A 30-day scoping period was held, and then during that period, a public scoping meeting was held as well. So then subsequent to the first scoping meeting, the applicant came back with some modifications to the project, and they were deemed to be substantial enough where a second scoping period was held. So a supplemental notice of preparation was circulated, and then a second 30-day scoping period was held. Next slide. So this slide summarizes the main input that was received during the process. These are the key issues that were identified to be addressed. The top 2 were definitely the most reoccurring concerns identified during the scoping period, and they're related to increases in traffic and then traffic-related noise. Next slide. So following that scoping process, the draft EIR was prepared, and this included several technical studies that are listed here. These responded to those key issues that were identified during that scoping process. So several of these studies were initiated after the scoping process, which was back in 2016, 2017, but each was updated prior to release of the draft EIR. Next slide. So the draft EIR evaluates the project in accordance with CEQA, obviously. Appendix G of the CEQA guidelines includes a checklist with these 20 environmental topics that are at the top here. Each of these topics includes multiple checklist questions that must be addressed. And then the draft EIR also includes a required discussion of project alternatives, significant unavoidable effects, growth-inducing impacts, and identifies an environmentally superior build alternative. Next slide. And just briefly, draft EIRs, they include thresholds of significance for each checklist question. It provides a basis to determine the degree of an environmental impact. So thresholds for the EIR were obtained from multiple applicable sources, including the CEQA guidelines, the Santa Rosa General Plan, Santa Rosa's Municipal Code, and some of the other items listed here. Next slide. For a summary of impacts, the majority of environmental impacts were determined to be less than significant. The topics that are listed here did require mitigation. So I'll just briefly describe what that is. For wildfire, mitigation is included to manage dry combustible vegetation during construction and other techniques to minimize the potential for any accidental fire ignition during construction. For noise, mitigation is included to reduce construction noise and vibration at adjacent residences to below thresholds, and to site the mechanical equipment and emergency generator in slightly different ways to keep the noise levels below the city's noise ordinance limits. So for bicycle safety, there's that new Class 2 bike lane that is being installed as part of the project. Mitigation includes signage to make sure to notify bikers and drivers of a mid-block bike lane change along Los Alamos Road where that bike lane would end. For biological resources, mitigation is included to avoid potential disturbance to special status species and to prevent contribution of any sediment to off-site Santa Rosa Creek. Biological mitigation also includes measures to minimize any potential impact to bats and birds, to compensate for filling of a relatively small on-site seasonal wetland and a drainage along Los Alamos Road, and finally for protecting trees and then replacing trees that are to be removed in accordance with the city's requirements. Mitigation also is included to prevent soil erosion, any water quality impacts, and to prevent any potential destruction of paleontological resources if such resources were encountered during construction. Finally, for cultural resources and tribal cultural resources, mitigation includes requiring a construction phase treatment plan, performing monitoring during construction, some avoidance measures for certain project components, procedures to minimize disturbance of any resources were they to be encountered during construction. Given the level of disturbance at the site, the draft EIR concludes that the significant and unavoidable impacts may result from the project even with mitigation. Next slide. So EIRs must include a discussion of project alternatives that attain most of the project objectives while also reducing the severity of a significant impact. So the draft EIR discusses several considered alternatives. One of the build alternatives was found to reduce the significant unavoidable impacts of the project, so to a less than significant level. That alternative is identified here as alternative 2, which I will describe next. This table compares alternative 2 with the project. The left column are some of the project components. The middle column is the project, and the right-hand column is the alternative 2. Both alternative 2 and the proposed project include the same number of units, 32 units, 64 bedrooms. The change begins where alternative 2 includes a different mix of cottages. It includes 7 cottages as opposed to the 10 cottages. And then for the villa building, it becomes a 3-story building providing 18 units, whereas under the proposed project, it's 2-story and 12 units. Another change is the residences at 5803 and 5815 Melita Road would remain in place under alternative 2, whereas they were going to be removed as part of the proposed project. And then the resident community building and all of the site access, the emergency vehicle access, and all of the off-site bike, pedestrian, and stormwater improvements are the same between the two projects. Next slide. So this slide shows the site plan for alternative 2. The reduction in the number of cottages and the shifting of those cottages north to the northern half of the project, along with leaving the residences at 5803 and 5815 in place, all contribute to a reduced project footprint and a decreased ground disturbance at the site. The same mitigation measures that were identified for the proposed project would be applicable to alternative 2. With those mitigation measures and with that reduced project footprint and the decreased ground disturbance, the impact of this alternative 2 on cultural resources and tribal cultural resources was determined to be reduced to less than significant. And therefore, for that reason, the draft EIR identifies alternative 2 as the environmentally superior build alternative. Next slide. So the draft EIR is currently 24 days into the overall 45-day public review period. A notice of availability and notice of public hearing were circulated and provided to public agencies, interested parties. Mailings went out to addresses within 600 feet of the site. A sign was used to post the notice at the project site, and the notice was posted at the county clerk and within the Santa Rosa Press Democrat. Next slide. The draft EIR is available on the city's website, and hard copies were made available at City Hall as well as the Rincon Valley Regional Library. Draft EIR and notices were submitted as required to the State Clearinghouse for review by state agencies, which then sent the draft EIR to these 13 state agencies listed here for review. Next slide. To date, 20 responses have been received in relation to the draft EIR. The concern that has been raised most frequently to date has been about the potential for the project to contribute traffic to the roadway system during a potential future wildfire evacuation scenario. Also, questions about the adequacy of the existing infrastructure, especially related to traffic, and potential for altering visual character of the area. So the final few slides I have here just provide some preliminary discussion of each of these items. So first, for emergency evacuations. You know this, the Santa Rosa has developed evacuation planning areas throughout the city. This image shows the city's Melita evacuation planning area, which both the existing Spring Lake Village campus and the proposed East Grove expansion are located within. So as shown in this image, there are 3 roadways in the area that are identified as evacuation routes. They are Montgomery Drive, Highway 12, and Calistoga Road. If my understanding is correct, their Channel Drive may be potentially being added to this as well in the future. So the existing Spring Lake Village, along with most of Rincon Valley, did have to evacuate in the 2017 and 2020 fires. Spring Lake Village, they do have an emergency evacuation plan that would be applied to the East Grove expansion. Based on conversations with the applicant, our understanding is that emergency evacuation process begins when there's any red flag warnings, any of the PG&E PSPSs, or any other alerts. They maintain a messaging system that provides alerts via text and email and calls to all residences, and they have building captains and do trainings. Also, the Santa Rosa Fire Department has coordinated with Spring Lake Village and a facility-specific evacuation site has been established for Spring Lake Village, which would also apply to the East Grove expansion project. So that designated evacuation site is located along West 3rd Street at a Place to Play park, which connects to Montgomery Drive. Spring Lake Village, they also use chartered buses to facilitate evacuation of residents and to try to keep traffic and vehicles down on the roadway, and they encourage carpooling and shuttling. Amy and I had conversations with the city's fire department based on those. The project's emergency vehicle access on Melita Road is really intended for fire department, law enforcement, or other emergency responder use. During the glass fire, the Santa Rosa Fire Department did utilize certain emergency vehicle access points for the purpose of allowing residents alternative exit points from various neighborhoods. The use of the emergency vehicle access on Melita Road then, it would need to be coordinated with the fire department to be utilized by residents as an evacuation point. In that case, it could reduce contribution of traffic to Los Alamos Road and interaction with any vehicles that may be exiting Villa Los Alamos on the other side of the roadway. Los Alamos Road and Melita Road, where the project's access points are both connected to Montgomery Drive, which is anticipated to be the primary evacuation route for the project site. And lastly, the expansion site is located outside of the Santa Rosa Wildland Urban Interface Fire Area. It's outside of the CAL FIRE designated state responsibility areas and the CAL FIRE designated very high fire hazard severity zones. The project would be required to be compliant with the California Building Code, the California Fire Code, and Santa Rosa Fire Department standards. Next slide. So for traffic, the current CEQA measurement for evaluating impacts is called vehicle miles traveled. Santa Rosa and many other jurisdictions use a threshold established by the Office of Planning and Research, which assumes that if a project generates 110 or fewer daily trips, it has a less than significant impact on transportation. So in comparison, the traffic study for the project estimates that the project will result in 80 daily trips, which is below that screening threshold. Therefore, there was a less than significant finding related to VMT. So roadway level of service, which is shown here, is no longer considered a transportation impact under CEQA. However, the Santa Rosa's general plan, they still do have a goal related to maintaining a level of service D or better along roadways. In comparison, the traffic study for the project determined that the intersection of Highway 12 and Los Alamos Road currently operates at a level of service B during the AM and PM peak hours, which is better than level of service D. The project is expected to result in 80 new daily trips, 5 of which would occur during the AM peak hour, and then 6 which would occur during the PM peak hour. The addition of that project traffic to the existing roadway intersection was shown to result in a 0.1 second increase in average delay, which is very small, and the intersection was shown to continue to operate at the existing level of service as it is now. This to evaluate visual character, visual simulations of the project were prepared. This particular one is a simulation from Highway 12. The tallest project building is the residential villa at 28 feet 3 inches, plus an additional 5 feet for mechanical equipment and the elevator shafts. So the proposed villa is the building that is visible here. The cottages are single story and are not really visible. The project buildings that are proposed are all within the height limits, and based on simulations like this, they would not affect views of Sonoma Mountain foothills or surrounding ridgelines. The development meets or exceeds all of the city's required setbacks for scenic roadways. The trees that would be removed along the corridors are relatively small in size, and other trees would be remaining, and there would be replanting of trees at the site as well. Design review also would be a required condition of approval and involve a review of all the applicable language in the design review guidelines. So final slide. Just a reiteration that all comments that are received on the draft EIR and in today's public hearing will be recorded and reviewed and evaluated and responded to. Written responses are required under CEQA, and they will be made publicly available. They will become part of the final EIR, and then there will be a follow-up public hearing for your commission where we will go over the final EIR, just as I'm going over this draft EIR, for discussion. And then at that time, city staff may be asking you to make that recommendation to the council for considering certification of the EIR. So thank you very much for your attention and time. That concludes my portion of the presentation. So Amy, back to you.
Thank you, Brian. And Chair Weeks, I believe that Michael from the applicant team may wish to speak a few words. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. So we'll go ahead and hear from the applicant team. I believe you're unmuted, so.
Yes, hello, this is Michael Cataldo. I'm currently the executive director at Spring Lake Village. Spring Lake Village is celebrating its 35th anniversary of serving seniors to the Santa Rosa and surrounding areas with a great reputation. Even though we have seen the name change a couple times, it has remained a not-for-profit community. We do appreciate all the comments regarding, fire evacuation. This is something the administrative staff plans on constantly. We have had 2 fairly successful evacuations, meaning that no residents were harmed and all our structures remained in place and everybody got back home in a reasonable time. So I'm just happy to answer any questions that might come up and provide any clarification. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cataldo. So does the commission have any questions right now before we go to the public hearing? Or I think it would be best to hear from the public first and then come back to the commission if that's agreeable with everybody. Okay, not seeing any no's. I will go ahead and open the public hearing on this item. If you wish to make a comment, please select the raised hand button on the Zoom screen. And if you're dialing in via telephone, please dial *9 to raise your hand, and each speaker will have 3 minutes. A countdown timer will appear for your convenience. Please make sure to unmute yourself when you're invited to do so, and your microphone will be muted at the end of that countdown. Mr. Maloney, do we?
Thank you, Chair Weeks. Yes, we have a couple hands raised.
Okay.
So I'm just going to go in the order that I see them, and starting with Dr. Pedro Avila.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Good afternoon, Chair Weeks and members of the Planning Commission. My name is Pedro Avila. I live on the corner of Los Alamos and Highway 12. My backyard is looking directly to this project, Spring Lake Village. I don't have an issue with the proposed project. I think option 2 is a good project. What I do want to make the Planning Commission aware of is how dangerous the intersection of Highway 12 and Los Alamos is. There are regular accidents that are happening all the time. Head-on collisions, people are running those lights, people are going real fast through that intersection. So I'm really concerned about increasing the density of residents. And even if it's increasing 80 trips through that intersection, I think it's one too many until that is mitigated. I would encourage the Planning Commission to request a report on the number of collisions that have occurred in that intersection over the last year, or even maybe a trend over a couple of years. Because I do believe you have an issue that we're speeding on one direction going east. The speed limit is 50. Coming into town, the speed limit is 45. But believe me, people are going 60, 70 through that intersection. It's horrible for me to hear the collisions, and then I can hear people screaming and in pain from my backyard. So I just want to make you aware of that. I do appreciate how considerate the planning has been for this project, and I appreciate the sidewalks and the bike lanes. But I do want to make you aware of this issue with how dangerous that intersection is. And I think you probably need to do your due diligence and take a deeper look at the collisions in that intersection and how this project might further impact and create more risk for the residents living in that area. I don't feel comfortable going through that intersection on foot. I have 2 young kids, and I hesitate to cross that intersection because people are always running it. So please, I hope that you would do a little bit more research on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Avila. Next person.
Thank you, Chair Weeks. Next, we have Edward Sherman.
Thank you.
Hi, Thank you for taking the time to listen to public comments. So I live at 5698 Eagle Rock Court. I'm within the notification zone, and I go past the property many times. My concern is the applicant is grossly understated the wildfire danger. When he says it's not in a high fire danger area, it's just by a whisker. It's surrounded on 3 sides by higher fire danger areas. I just looked up all the maps, and I could be on that property and throw a stone in 2 different opposite directions, and I'll hit the high fire zone or the urban wildlife interface areas. If you go to the county maps, CAL FIRE, the high fire danger is to the north, and medium, the next lower danger is the side that's Annandale Park. I think it's just fundamentally wrong to be increasing the population density in a low density area when we know that fire, I've been here 30 years. In the last 5 years, I've had to evacuate my house 3 times. The last evacuation was horrific to traffic on Highway 12 and the backup of traffic on Los Alamos Road, even trying to get to Highway 12. We don't need to add to that traffic burden. The other problem is with Montgomery Drive as an evacuation corridor. That's a dangerous evacuation corridor. Because that's a valley, we can have winds blowing fires in from multiple directions. It's wooded, you can have trees falling onto that road from either side. Let's not increase the danger by adding more senior residents. We're gonna need help evacuating. Yes, Spring Lake Village has done a good job so far, but we can count on the climate hazard will grow non-linearly. It is not only going to get worse each year, it's going to get worse faster from global warming and release of methane gases. It's just no place to increase the density in Santa Rosa. There are far better sites within the city to increase senior housing. Plus, the applicant's going to want to bridge that area because they bought up the intervening properties. So they're going to, if they get this, they're going to want to go and increase it again and fill in that other area. That's going to be more of an increase. I just think it's so inappropriate to do this and dangerous. That's all the comments I have right now. Oh, and by the way, traffic danger. My wife's car was T-boned on Highway 12 at the intersection, and she and my son were both injured. So yes, I vouch for that as being a real danger.
Thank you, Mr. Sherman.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Chair Weeks. Next, we have an MP. If you can please state your name for the record.
Hi, can you hear me? My name is Mindy Pengel. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I live on Melita Road. I want to just, first of all, support what the gentleman just said about the wire file urban interface, having been here for the last fire and the other. The lot across the street from us burned, the house around the corner burned, all the fences behind us up to Melita Road and 12 burned. So the map may say one thing, but the reality of what we experienced, I think, is far different. So first of all, I'd like to just support that. Secondly, I'm really concerned about the water situation and adding more housing to our area. We don't have any water, and I don't know where we're going to get this water over these years that are predicted to be just as bad, to continue adding housing in this area. And thirdly, I attended the Zoom meeting for El Noca, which is just up the street. And I don't think we can consider these in isolation. You're talking about a smaller unit, and I do appreciate Spring Village and what they've done. But additionally, we're looking at, I forget how many units, but somewhere for 700, 800, 900 people up the street. So I don't think we can consider this in isolation for other projects that are being considered for this area at this time. I generally am not opposed to this. I think it looks like it's very well planned, as is the El Noca project, and I support senior housing. But I too agree that I think this is not the appropriate time for this project. Thank you.
Is there anybody else? Mr. Maloney?
One moment, Chair Weeks. Does not appear anyone else is raising their hand at this time.
Okay, we'll wait just a few seconds to make sure that nobody else wants to speak. Okay, with that, I will close the public hearing on this item and bring it back to the commission for the commission to provide comments to staff and the consultant regarding the draft EIR on Spring Lake Village East Grove project. So we'll go ahead. Commissioner Duggan.
Can we ask questions first of either staff or the consultants?
Yes.
Okay, because I've got a question, both for the environmental consultants.
Okay, so can we get the environmental consultant on as a panelist?
Okay. Looks like he's here.
I am here, yes.
All right. So you mentioned that alternative 2, the reduced footprint alternative, is environmentally superior. So does that mean that that becomes the project?
That is more of a procedural question that probably is best answered by city staff.
Okay. And the second question is what we just heard about the traffic incidents at Highway 12 in Los Alamos. I wonder if the traffic consultant could talk to the accident rate at that intersection.
Yeah, we will certainly summarize that and respond to that in the final EIR. There is a traffic study that was included in an appendix to the draft EIR, and it does include a review of collision rates. And the collision rates are less than the statewide average for four-way signalized intersections similar to this. So the review is within the draft EIR. It's showing something a bit different than the concerns that we heard. That's not to undermine or disregard the concerns and the observations, but what could be done is a review of more recent traffic collision data to support a response in the final EIR. But the data that's in the technical study in the draft EIR was showing that the number of collisions at that intersection is below the statewide average collision rate, which is the threshold that's used.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Do any of the other commissioners have questions of staff or the consultant before I head back to you for comments? Vice Chair Peterson?
So I think this came up with El Noke, and I don't necessarily need an answer immediately, but to the public comment about the wildland urban interface fire area, like the El Noke project, that's referencing a map from or whatever from 2009, and my understanding is that is being updated for this year. So I guess one question is my understanding correct? And two, how, if any, how, if at all, will that update be integrated into the final EIR?
Well, I would defer to. Sorry, I'm jumping on this. I would defer to the city staff about the status of any update to that. And then certainly, it would be incorporated into considerations for the final EIR. There are development conditions that are triggered for projects that are within that zone that you just mentioned. So those could be conditions of approval that become applicable to the project. But I would need to defer to the city on any kind of update about the kind of the status of the mapping update itself.
We are not aware of that actually occurring right now, but I will follow up with our fire department and find out, and we can address that in the final EIR.
Thank you. I guess, some of the comments that I have are questions, but I know they won't be answered today. they would be answered in the final EIR. So let's go ahead and go through the rest of the commissioners at this point and then come back to me. Commissioner Carter, any comments?
I think the primary comment I have is, given more recent information about fire hazard in this particular part of town, will the significance criteria for those hazards change with the possible development of a new map, or based on the comment received during the draft EIR period? Is there any chance that those significance criteria for the hazard and the traffic congestion impacts be revised in any way, or will they be addressed merely as response to comments? That's the principal concern I have at this time.
Thank you. Commissioner Duggan?
Yeah, I've got several comments.
Good.
So I'm glad you mentioned what you did in the presentation about the wildfire and the evacuation plan at Spring Lake Village, and I wish that would be incorporated in the EIR, because I really think that the EIR needs a wildfire chapter similar to the El Noco project that we just reviewed, the EIR, because you can hear this. I'm talking to the consultant. Just the residents there know what it's like to evacuate in the event of a wildfire, and how it's not going to be easy to put additional people in this area. Okay, so specifically in the EIR on page 2-10, does the daily peak hour trips include the shuttle bus and staff coming and going? That wasn't made clear in the traffic study. Also, page 2-10, I know that the water agency uses for single-family dwellings 288 gallons per day of water, and that sounds really high, considering that people's landscape uses are going to be met with all the water from the wells, and I'm just questioning that figure, especially in the situation we're in now with the extreme drought conditions. I don't think anybody's using 288 gallons per day per household. Also on page 2-10, the emergency backup generator, what's the proposed gallons of fuel supply for the generator? Also on that same page, is the community building the only building with gas supply? It kind of indicates that it might be, per the way the paragraph is written. And does that mean the cottages are going to have all electric heat and for cooking and heating and laundry facilities? They're not going to have any gas supplies for those buildings. Okay, under 262, on page 262, list of permissions, other permits and approvals under that section. Are any permissions required from the Lytton or Grayton tribes, especially if extensive tribal cultural resources are discovered on site? And should that be listed here? And then the approach to analysis on 3.1-8. Did the computer simulations remove all the trees that are slated for removal, or are they just kind of not taken out of the way if they're not really impacting the views? 3.1-13 on the top of the page. Just the whole discussion of the impact of the tree removal. It seems subjective, especially it's the trees that are removed within the 100-foot scenic setback, table 3.1-3, especially just, for example, the coast live oak that's 45 feet tall. It takes, they grow 2 to 3 feet a year. So that would take 15 to 20 years to replace if you wanted to have a tree that same size. So it seems subjective to say it's not going to be any kind of impact to remove a tree of that size. Okay, page 3.2-16, table 328. Should this table include the emissions from the diesel generator? And if it runs continuously for a couple of days every year in the event of a power outage, like what's the expected runtime of that generator per year? Okay, page 3.5-12, mitigation measure GO-8. How is this going to be implemented practically? This is requiring a paleontologist to be on site, to be contacted to periodically inspect any ground disturbances. And I'm just wondering, how does this work when you've got large construction vehicles who are probably just going to damage and destroy whatever they uncover before any kind of discovery can be made by a qualified paleontologist? And how often does periodically mean? Is it once a week, every day for the grading and ground disturbance part of the project? Page 3.7-1, under wildfire hazards, it doesn't really explicitly say what this site's hazard zone is. And what does the classification mean? You know, if you're in a moderate zone versus a high zone, you know, what are the differences in what has to happen or what kind of treatments are required for the project site? Okay, page 3.7-5. So I believe one of my fellow commissioners brought this up, but or I guess it was a different plan, but the local hazard mitigation plan that's referenced is 2016. And as we all know, that was prior to the three recent fire events that caused the evacuation of Rincon Valley. So has this plan been updated since 2016? And should that be referenced here? That is, in fact, there's a more recent iteration of that. Okay, 3.7-10. Also referring to the backup emergency generator. So how many hours or days is it predicted to run per year? And is it sized to provide 100% of the site's power needs when it runs full time? And how far away from the nearest dwelling unit in the event of a fire is it located? Okay, page 3.7-13. This is what Vice Chair Peterson referenced, the SR Wildland Urban Interface Map. Has it been updated since 2009? It seems pretty likely that that's been worked on since 2009. And that a newer version should be referenced. And 15, I was happy to hear in your presentation, the applicant's presentation, that, or the consultant's presentation, that Spring Lake Village has an evacuation plan that they're going to combine with this offsite area. But I think that should be noted in the EIR. Okay. Page 3.10-14, the noise barrier fence wall under mitigation measure NOI-6-1B. Is it indicated on the site plan, and is it only along the property line adjoining the residential properties? Okay, chapter 3-11. I just had a general comment that maybe this section required a discussion about potential for wildfire and the need for evacuations for residents. Okay, page 3.12-3, the Sonoma Valley Trail Feasibility Study. Was the project referred to Sonoma County Regional Parks for their input regarding the trail alignment? And what were their comments, if they had any? Okay, page 3.12-8, section 3.12.4, approach to analysis. Did the traffic study commence prior to December 2018 when the Office of Planning and Research published their technical advisory with traffic impacts needing to use VMT instead of LOS? Because just seeing LOS everywhere, it's like, why do we care about that if we're not measuring traffic inputs with level of service? You know, I think we've got to get away from that. So it should be more VMT required. Okay. And on page 3.12-9, it mentions in the paragraph right above 3.12.5, says the trip generation VMT was overestimated due to the use of the shuttle service. So presumably the shuttle service VMT is included in the study. And does the shuttle only take residents to the other Spring Lake Village, the main campus, or does it also take residents off-site to doctor's appointments, shopping, cultural events? And if so, what's the vehicle miles traveled estimate for that? Okay, I'm getting close to the end here, so bear with me. Okay, and page 3.12-10 are the miles associated with construction, all the construction generated traffic, including workers coming to and from the job site, the 466 estimated trips during the demolition and grading off haul, and the 1,236 total round trips estimated for haul in. Are those included in the VMT analysis? Okay, and then just as a sort of a general comment, but I think of all the years I've been on the Planning Commission, which is now almost 15. This is the first time I believe I've reviewed an EIR that had significant and unmitigatable effects on cultural and tribal cultural resources, and so it's kind of stands out to me in a big way because of that. And I'm just wondering how that would happen if say, a significant resources were found on the site. Is there any potential that construction-related discovery would stop work for an extended period of time or necessitate the redesign of the project to better avoid disturbing any of the discovered resource? I personally can think of one project I was involved in as a plumbing designer years ago in the county, where the building footprint actually goes around an archaeological midden. They redesigned the building to surround the area and not disturb it. And I'm wondering if the potential for that is here in this project. Okay, page 3.13-10, mitigation measure CR2D, I believe, or CR, yeah, 2D. There's a sentence that I've excerpted, says the city shall determine whether avoidance is feasible in the event of finding tribal cultural resources. And so who at the city would determine that? Which office in the city? And what recourse do the Federated Indians of Grayton or Lytton have if they disagree with the decision from the city? And then also my last comment is for the discussion of alternatives. Alternative 2 is the maximum avoidance alternative. And I'm just wondering what it takes for that to become the project. Like you said, if it's a procedural call of the city, or if that one is in fact superior to the project as stated, why isn't that the project under consideration? And so those are my comments.
Thank you, Commissioner Duggan. Thorough as always. Thank you. So we'll go to Commissioner Holton.
That's the downside of following Commissioner Duggan is she pretty much knocked it out the park. I thought I actually had something until the very last comment, because I'm also very concerned. I haven't sat on a commission board for very long, and that also stood out to me. So I would encourage the planners to kind of go back and also most certainly ensure that all of the studies have been conducted after the wildfires, because when you have information that's that stale, and also you look at the population growth between 2016 and 2021, it's pretty significant as well. So thank you very much. Especially thank you, Commissioner Duggan, for just wrapping it up and just knocking it out the park. So thank you for your diligence and your amazing study. So thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Kalia.
Thank you. Yeah, similarly to Commissioner Duggan's point, it looks like this EIR is from 2017, which is also why the traffic data is from 2017. I looked at the traffic study, and it says that it's the last 5 years that they had data was from 2011 to 2016, and that's where you get the numbers of collisions I'm talking about on Highway 12 in Los Alamos compared to the statewide collision rate. Yeah, from 2011 to 2016, it was less than the statewide average, but I would like to see what that is. I mean, we're talking about from 5 years from 2011 to 2016, from 2016 to 2021 is totally different. It's a long time. And just another question, similarly to the Anoka project, is there a point in time where these EIRs need to be updated before they come to the Planning Commission? And that's kind of a question that I have is like, why does it take, 4 years since an EIR is completed for it to come to the Planning Commission? That's really my main comment, because now this is the second time we've seen an EIR in a very short amount of time that it's been, 3 to 5 years old. And it's really hard to determine, environmental impacts based on old data.
Is that it?
Yeah.
Thank you, Commissioner Kalia. Vice Chair Peterson.
So I think my fellow commissioners and Commissioner Duggan in particular pretty ably handled a lot of the issues I had. I would like to add my voice to the chorus. I think it's clear, the concern about maybe there should be a separate wildfire section, or at least it needs to be based on updated data, such to the extent that it exists. But in particular, I again want to highlight the cultural and tribal resources portion. I think it's really, to see something and being mindful of the confidentiality issues that come with this for very good reasons. But to see a significant and unavoidable impact and very little specificity on how you're going to deal with it. Is an archaeologist going to be on site? I trust that the tribes, will be involved in setting up the planning, but, it would be nice to see some more specificity on what happens. Is there going to be a different site plan? Is an archaeologist going to be on site? Just kind of a level of specificity to protect these kinds of resources that I think historically have been not protected very well, and apparently can be subject to unavoidable impact, even if the mitigation measures are adopted. So that's my main concern and my comment for the draft EIR.
Thank you. Let me go to my questions. Like Commissioner Kalia, when I looked at the traffic study that was attached in the appendix, the Switters report is now 5 years old, because it was April 2016. And I know it takes a while to get that data, but it would be great if we could have updated data since that time. So that was one thing. And then I also agree that there should be a more thorough wildfire section, and whether it be a separate section or in the public facilities, whatever, just more information. Also, it talked about the Santa Rosa's emergency operation plan from 2017. Has that been updated since 2017? And was it done pre-fire in 2017 or post-fire in 2017? So that was a question I had. And also on the cultural, tribal, and cultural resources, that also is a concern of mine. And I agree with Vice Chair Peterson that that information should be fleshed out more and really go into a lot more detail as to what mitigation measures there would be, even though it's unmitigatable. And going back to the traffic issue, I think a lot of the information in the traffic study that was attached as the appendix should be in the EIR. So if people don't look at the appendix, they have that information. Some of it about some of the recommendations and also some of the statistics. So I think that was my comments. Yes. So commissioners have any other comments for staff and the consultants? Commissioner Kalia?
Just one comment around, so if we do, or I guess if we do ask for more information or more current traffic study, let's say, or certain aspects of the EIR, or if that does come about, I just think for future planning commission for EIR meetings, I would like to see something that has a little bit more in depth around the series of events of like when the applicant submitted or the applicant's representative submitted the EIR and how long it took to process, because I would just think it would be relatively unfair for us to require an update on a specific report and that the applicant would obviously have to pay for that if it wasn't for their, because obviously EIRs are it's a significant document and it's a significant financial investment. And I just think that it wouldn't be fair for an applicant to have to invest a significant more amount of money because it took us as a city so long to process. That's just my only feasible comment.
Thank you. Commissioner Holton?
I'd actually like to correct my previous statement. The city of Santa Rosa actually hasn't grown since 2016. So sorry about that. My bad.
So can we, Ms. Nicholson, can you come back to us to make sure that you have what you need from us?
Thank you. I appreciate all the comments and questions. I wanted to follow up on one point that, or one question that Commissioner Duggan had as it relates to the alternative. So alternative 2. So it is identified in the draft EIR as the environmentally superior alternative, but that doesn't mean it becomes the project. The proposed project is for the 2-story villa as outlined in the draft EIR, but the EIR does analyze alternative 2 as well. So the commissioners can state if they have a preference for an alternative, if they would like, and I have heard some comments regarding or to that effect. And oh, go ahead.
Is now the time to state that, or when it comes back to us in the final EIR, is that the time to state it?
Now is fine, and also in the future as well. And then also, just as it relates to the timing, this project has morphed over time, and then there's also been a pretty extensive tribal consultation that has occurred over the years. So that is part of the reason that some of the references and documents might be from several years ago. And I'm not sure if Brian has anything to add as it relates to the timing of particular technical studies. I know that he spoke to that briefly in his presentation.
Well, sure. You know, Commissioner Kalia, you kind of mentioned, you know, this looks like it was an EIR that was developed in 2017. That's when it began, the scoping process began, and then the technical studies began to be prepared. But the studies have been, you know, updated. There's a cover letter on most of the technical studies that are dated 2020 that are refreshing this as we got through the process. As Amy mentioned, the project evolved a bit. Some parcels were added to it. So it has been a lengthy process, but it is an EIR that is current. Now, we acknowledge, like Chair Weeks mentioned, there's some data in relation to collision histories that we can look to see if there's any new data, you know, over the more recent 5-year period. And we will do all of that as we develop responses to everybody's EIRs. Comments. We've, you know, written all those down, and certainly will be providing written responses to everything. But just to kind of reiterate this, you know, this is a current draft EIR that's out for ongoing 45-day review. It's not something that was ready in 2017 and has just been sitting there for a few years.
Thank you, Brian.
Sure.
And Chair Weeks, may I add something?
Yes.
This is Ashley Crocker, Assistant City Attorney. I just wanted to follow up on two of those points that I think I'm glad that you raised them, Commissioners. And one, just again, as Ms. Nicholson said, the environmentally superior would not become the project, but you can certainly make that recommendation for if that is your preference. We've heard your comments here now, and then certainly at the hearing on the project with the final EIR, you could make those recommendations. And there will also be additional study as to the feasibility of the alternatives. The alternatives included in the EIR are just potentially feasible. And then we look at, by the time it goes to council, whether or not they are actually feasible. You may remember there was some of this discussion when we had the Caritas project come through. There was significant unavoidable impacts to historic resources, and then some of the alternatives reduce those impacts. And then there were some studies as to the feasibility of those alternatives. So that will continue to evolve. And if the project moves forward with the significant unavoidable impacts, then the City Council would be asked to adopt a statement of overriding considerations, which would balance the benefits of the project against the environmental impacts. And that was something that we saw most recently in Caritas as well. So I hope that's somewhat helpful. And then just in terms of the data, just also that the analysis of the impacts compares the project to the baseline conditions, which in CEQA are typically set at the time that the notice of preparation for the EIR was posted. So there's not any specific guidelines in terms of when does information become stale, but I appreciate Brian talking about that some of those studies have been updated, and we'll definitely be mindful of these comments and look at that as we go forward to the final EIR. And that's all I wanted to add.
So Ms. Crocker, the studies that you're referring to about the alternative, that is, we would see that when we get the final EIR back before us?
That would typically be, yeah, the applicant and the city would be taking a look at that feasibility, and it would have to be prepared before the City Council, as it's ultimately a policy determination. But typically, they are part of the package for the Planning Commission's review as well. So I would anticipate yes, and if I'm thinking correctly on Caritas, there was a study that came forward to the Planning Commission at that time. So the fact that it's environmentally superior, you know, it's just as part of this analysis and disclosure process where CEQA requires you to really do a side-by-side comparison and come up with which one reduces the most impacts. And of course, you see the environmentally superior reduces the cultural resource and tribal cultural resource impacts, but then it may increase some of the other impacts. So it's kind of a balancing there as well.
Thank you very much. Questions from commissioners? Comments? And Ms. Nichols or Commissioner Holton?
I would just like to state my preference. Alternative 2 most certainly is my preference at this point. Just wanted to throw that out there now and see if anyone else wants to jump on board.
Any Commissioner Duggan?
Well, so Commissioner Holton's not out there in the lake by himself. I'll also say that alternative 2 would be my preference if it's feasible.
Yes, I also would agree with that, depending upon the other studies that would make other things not unmitigatable, if that makes sense. Commissioner Collier, did you have a hand up?
Yeah, I just want to say I would like to see the comments or the responses to our comments tonight, and any kind of feasibility analysis on alternative 2 before I stated a preference.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, so Ms. Nicholson, do you have what you need?
Yes.
I mean, yeah. Do you have what you need?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So with that, we'll go ahead and get to the end of our meeting, unless Mr. Triple has any parting words for us.
No, thank you so much for your time this evening and for all of the work that you put into reviewing the Spring Lake Draft EIR. It really showed, excuse me, it really showed in your questions and comments, and we so appreciate that effort. So thank you all. Have a great weekend, and I believe we won't see you until after the 4th. So have a happy 4th of July weekend as well.
Thank you. So with that, I will adjourn the meeting of the June 24th, 2021 Planning Commission. Bye, everybody.
All right, thank you.